Hey, what's up guys? Welcome back to Cars with Cuz. In today's video, I'm going to be showing you how to repair and paint your wheels so you can remove any rust or curb rash you may have so you can paint your wheels and get them looking like brand new. But we're not going to be painting these wheels that came stock on my 2016 Volkswagen Jetta with some hubcaps. Instead, we're going to be repairing and painting these OEM wheels that I got from Facebook Marketplace for only $300. And as you can see, these wheels have plenty of curb rash on them and are extremely dirty, both on the outside and on the inside of the rim. And when we're done, these wheels are gonna go from looking like this to looking like this. So let's start off with everything you're gonna need to repair and paint your wheels. First off, you're gonna need some soapy water to get those wheels clean before you sand them. You're also going to need some acetone to clean off the wheels before painting them. Acetone is a really good degreaser and it will get off all the contaminants from the wheels. I should also note, do not use acetone on the wheels after you've painted them. They will remove the paint. And to dry off those wheels, you're going to need some microfiber towels. I also recommend not using paper towels, which will leave lint and ruin your paint job. So stick to using microfiber towels. You can get a 30 pack like this at Walmart for about $20. Up next, you're going to need some sandpaper to get rid of that curb rash. Starting out with 60 grit, sanding down the curb rash, 320 grit to feather it out, and then 600 grit to smooth it out and get it ready for paint. You're also going to need some Bondo metal reinforced filler to fill in that curb rash and level out the surface of the wheel, and some kind of a squeegee to spread out that Bondo on the wheel. I also recommend that you get some Bondo glazing and spot putty to fill in any pinhole or little scratches that you can't see with the naked eye. This will make your finish look a lot better with the paint being applied. Up next is some masking tape to mask off anything you don't want painted on the wheels, specifically the valve stems. You're also going to need some index cards to mask off the rim from the tire so you don't get any overspray on the tire. And last but not least, you're going to need some paint to paint your wheels. Starting off with the primer. You're gonna need some primer just in case your curb rash is really bad and while sanding you expose the bare metal. You want to cover up that bare metal with the primer so your wheel doesn't rust in the future. I also recommend that you pick up this VHT primer, as this is by far the best primer I've ever used that comes in a spray can, which you'll see in this video. Now in order to paint your wheels, you're gonna need to pick a color. I'm going with this gloss black from Rust-Oleum, but you can use any color you want to paint your wheels. I just prefer the way that gloss black wheels are gonna look on my white car. And after you're done applying your base coat, you're gonna want to apply some clear coat to protect the finish of your painted wheels. However, I read the directions on this can before I used it just to make sure everything would end up okay. And look what it says on here. Do not apply clear over stops rust, which is exactly what this base coat is. So instead, I'm gonna let these wheels cure for about a week after painting them, and then I'm going to be applying 2K clear, which you can get off Amazon for about $40 for 2 cans. But I do suggest that you get 4 cans just so you don't run out and have to wait to order some more. And if you're wondering why you shouldn't apply this clear coat, it's because this clear coat will cause your paint to bubble up, which will ruin your day. And trust me, you don't want that to happen. So read the directions on the can before using it and make sure you do the job right. And now that you know everything you're gonna need to paint your wheels, let's get into these 6 easy steps so you can do this job at home too. Step number 1 is to clean the wheel. Step number 2 is to sand down the wheel. Step number 3 is to apply body filler. Step number 4 is to sand down the body filler. Step number 5 is to prep the wheels for paint. And in the 6th and final step, paint your wheels the color of your choice. With that being said, let's get into this video on how to repair and paint your wheels so you can do it at home too. So first, let's get started by cleaning these wheels off with some soapy water and a microfiber towel. You want to make sure these wheels are nice and clean before applying any filler or paint to the wheels. Make sure you clean the front of the wheel and the back of the wheel. Now with the back of the wheel, I tried everything to get this dried up brake dust off of the wheel. Nothing worked. I tried soapy water. I tried wax and grease remover. I tried wheel cleaner. I tried scrubbing bubbles. I tried everything, but nothing was getting this off. So instead, I went ahead and tried using a scuff pad with some soapy water, which finally ended up working. However, if you do use a scuff pad and some soapy water, remember, you will have to apply compound and polish to restore that OEM shine to your wheel. So if you don't plan on painting the back of your wheels, do not sand them down with a scuff pad because you will have to compound and polish them. And after you're done cleaning your wheels, rinse them off with some water, making sure you get all the soap off the wheels. So after you're done rinsing off the wheels, it's time to get to the next step, which is removing the Curbrash from the wheel. So let's get started by sanding it down. I'm gonna start by using 60 grit sandpaper to remove this rough Curbrash, and I'm doing this all by hand so you can do it at home too without any special tool. And I would honestly recommend that you do this by hand because you get a special feel by using your hand to sand this down. You know where all the rough edges are and how much you need to sand and how much you don't need to sand. So if you're gonna do this at home, I recommend doing it by hand. You don't need any special equipment to get your wheels ready for that filler so you can fill in that Curbrash and get a great finish when you're done painting these wheels. I should also mention you might not need to sand down your Curbrash until it's all gone. You may just need to scuff up the area so that it's level with the rest of the wheel. And if that's the case, don't start out with 60 grit sandpaper. Use something that's a little less coarse like 320 grit sandpaper and just level out the Curbrash to the surface of the wheel. There's no reason to be sanding down to the bare metal or creating grooves if your wheel doesn't require it. Now that you're done sanding down the Curbrash, make sure to blow off any of that sand dust left on the wheel and then clean off the wheel with some soapy water and a microfiber towel to ensure that the filler will properly bond to the surface of the wheel without any debris left over from sanding. It's now time to start mixing the Bondo metal reinforced filler. And before you start mixing it, make sure you have something to spread out the filler on. Do not use something porous like cardboard. Use something like plastic or parchment paper. If you use something porous like cardboard, you'll end up with air bubbles in your filler, which will not spread out well on the surface you're applying it to. So I'm going to be using this squeegee and spreading the filler on there. Now with this filler, it's a two-part system. You have the filler itself and you have a hardener. On the back, you should read the directions first. It tells you how many drops of filler you need to apply to the filler and how big the filler has to be so you can have the correct ratio of filler to hardener. So go ahead and pop open the lid on the filler and then use some kind of stick to mix up the filler. Now take the filler out and spread it on your squeegee. After that, use the hardener and place the correct amount of drops onto the filler. Now using your other squeegee, pick up the filler and then spread it out. Now pick it up again and spread it out. You should keep doing this until the filler and the hardener have mixed together. You'll know when you're done when you don't see any more drops of hardener in the filler. Now that your filler looks like this, it's time to go ahead and apply it to the rim. So let's go ahead and do that to fix this Curbrash. Now when you're applying the filler to your rim and fixing this Curbrash, do not apply a lot of filler. You don't need a lot. Remember, the more you apply, the more you're going to have to sand. So just apply enough to cover up the Curbrash and make it level with the rest of the wheel surface. Also make sure that you round off the filler so it matches the rest of the circle around the rim. And after you're done applying the filler, wait about 30 to 40 minutes before sanding. With that being said, I filled in the Curbrash on this wheel. I already did it on the second one as well. So now we just have to wait the 30 to 40 minutes. But I'm not going to make you guys wait. So let's go ahead and start sanding down the filler so we can level out the wheel and have a nice smooth surface getting ready for primer so we can paint these wheels. Now first we're going to start off with 60 grit sandpaper and sanding down all the filler that we applied to the wheel. And when using the 60 grit sandpaper, you want to apply light to medium pressure. If you apply too much pressure, you're going to create a groove in the rim, which basically defeats the purpose of applying that filler to cover up the Curbrash. So you want to maintain a nice and even flow when sanding down with the 60 grit, which is really coarse. You don't want to sand in one area for too long. And as you can see, I'm not using any special tools to sand down this filler, which means you can do this at home too by hand. Now that I've sanded down the entire wheel, I'm gonna use some compressed air and blow off all the sand dust. It's now time to start applying the spot putty to fill in any pinholes or little scratches that you can't see with the naked eye. So let's go ahead and do that. First, squeeze out some putty on the edge of your squeegee, because this is going to give you a lot better handling when you go to spread the putty on the rim. Now you want to apply this putty to anywhere you applied filler to, so go ahead and do that, and if you see any other imperfections on the wheels, try applying the putty there too. And remember, this putty will go on thin, so don't try to smear it in one place to try and cover up a hole. It's not meant to cover up big holes or big scratches. This is only meant to cover up pinholes or little tiny scratches that you can't really see until you get really close to the wheel. This isn't a body filler, so don't try using this to fill in any big holes or scratches. And after applying the putty, wait about 30 to 40 minutes to let it completely dry. After the putty has dried for about 30 to 40 minutes, we can go ahead and start sanding it down with some 320 grit sandpaper. So let's go ahead and do that. And as you're sanding, remember to apply a little to medium pressure. This spot putty is really thin when you put it on and when it's dry. If you apply too much pressure, you're just gonna sand right through it. So feel around with your finger after you've sanded it down to make sure it's nice and level with the rest of the wheel. And also try to round off the rim so it's a nice clean circle when you're done sanding it down. You don't want any bumps from the filler or spot putty when you go to feel around the rim with your finger. You want to make sure it's a nice smooth circle all the way around. And now that we've sanded down the putty, it's time to sand down the entire wheel with 600 grit sandpaper so the primer has something to adhere to when you're going to paint. For this process, I'm going to be using a sanding block and just folding my 600 grit sandpaper around it, and for the small little grooves that I can't get the sand block into, I'm just going to use the sandpaper by itself. But be careful with this, you don't want to scratch up the wheel any more than it was, so just make sure you get the clear coat off and the wheel is nice and scuffed up and ready to be painted with the primer. Now this may be a very tedious task, but you have to scuff up that entire rim and get rid of most of that clear coat, so the primer has something to adhere to when you go to spray it down. This is also done to ensure that the paint won't peel off when you're driving down the road really fast or when you're using a pressure washer to wash your wheels. And if you decide not to scuff up the wheel or sand down the clear coat for whatever reason, your paint will peel eventually. So be patient and take the extra time to do this the right way. You don't want to be doing all this work only to end up with your paint peeling in the end. And now that all 4 wheels have been sanded down with 600 grit sandpaper, let's take them outside and wash them off. I'm going to be using a garden hose with some running water to rinse off all 4 wheels, and then use some soapy water and a microfiber towel and individually clean off all of the wheels one by one. So let's go ahead and do that. Also remember to clean off the side of the tire because any debris or dust that's trapped in there will fly up eventually and probably land in your paint job. With all 4 wheels now clean and rinsed off, it's time to prep our paint area. So what I did here is just lay down a plastic sheet so the paint doesn't get on the concrete, and then I put 4 pieces of wood down so the tires are a little bit elevated when I go to paint them. Now I'm also going to be rinsing down the plastic sheet and all the concrete around it. I'm doing this to avoid any kind of dust jumping up in the air and landing on these wheels when I paint them. With that being said, we can get to our last cleaning of the wheels. For this process, I'm going to be using some acetone and a microfiber towel to wipe down the wheels, both inside and on the outside. So let's go ahead and do that, and then we can finally start painting after we let the wheels dry from the acetone. And remember to mask off anything you don't want to get painted, such as the valve stem. Now for the wheel, I'm actually just going to be using index cards to mask off the wheel. With all that out of the way, with the wheel sanded and cleaned, we can finally start painting. I've already done the inside with primer. I'm going to show you guys how to do the outside, the face of the wheel with the primer now. So when you go to apply your first coat of primer, you want to apply it lightly so you don't get any runs in your paint. So let's go ahead and apply the first coat. Now that we're going to be applying the first coat of primer to the face of the wheel, remember to wear your respirator and to shake up the can for about a minute before using it for the first time, and to shake it up for 10 seconds in between coats. Now let's apply our first light coat of primer. Now when applying your first coat of primer, don't expect to get full coverage. You do not want to get full coverage with your first coat. You will eventually get a run if you try and do that. So get about 50% coverage with the first coat of primer. And there you go, after applying your first coat of primer, this is what it should look like. 50% coverage, you don't want it all covered on the first coat. Now you have to wait for about 10 to 15 minutes to let this primer dry. So I'm going to wait the full 15 minutes and we can do coat number 2. 15 minutes have elapsed and it's now time to put on coat number 2. Now with coat number 2, you want to make sure you get full coverage on the wheel. So shake the can up and apply a heavier coat, making sure you cover all the spots that you missed when you applied your first light coat to ensure that you get full coverage on the wheel this time around. And after you've applied your second coat, give the wheel 10 to 15 minutes to dry again, and then you can apply your third and final coat of primer. So shake the can up real well, and let's apply our third and final coat of primer. Now when applying this third and final coat, you want no spots left uncovered with this primer. So make sure you get absolutely full coverage of the wheel with this primer. So rotate around the wheel and make sure you get all those little spots and those little crevices that you didn't get the first 2 times. And after you've applied your third and final coat, give the wheel about 40 minutes to an hour to dry, just to make sure that the primer is absolutely dry before applying your base coat. Now usually I would go ahead and sand down this primer with 600 grit or 800 grit sandpaper, but this primer is so smooth there is absolutely no reason to sand this down. So if you're gonna take on this project, I really recommend that you get some VHT primer. It is absolutely the best primer I've ever used that comes out of a spray can. So now that you don't have to sand down all 4 wheels again, you can just go ahead and apply the first coat of the color of your choice. Now it's time to apply the first coat of base. And before you start spraying, make sure you shake the can up for about a minute, and also to double check all 4 wheels to make sure no debris landed on the primer. If there's any debris on the wheel, clean it off because it will end up in your base coat. And if that happens, your paint job is ruined and you're going to have to start all over again. So with that being said, let's apply our first light coat of gloss black. And on to coat number 2 of gloss black. This time we want to ensure that we get full coverage of the wheel, and we also want to make sure that we maintain the same distance of spraying in a nice and even flow so we don't get any runs in our paint. So let's go ahead and shake up the can and apply our second coat. You also want to make sure that you remember to keep rotating around the entire wheel so you don't miss any spots when you go to spray down your second coat. Try to get as close to full coverage as you can when you're spraying around the wheel. Just be careful, you don't want to stand in one spot for too long. Keep moving around the wheel and keep spraying at an even distance so you don't get any runs in your paint. And when it's time to spray the lug nut holes, just give it 1 or 2 spritz and keep moving around the wheel to get all of the holes covered up. Our second coat is now finished, and as you can see, we got as close to possible as we can to getting full coverage of the wheel without getting any runs. So now I'm going to let these wheels dry for another 10 to 15 minutes, and then we're going to go spray down our third and final coat of gloss black. Now at this point you should not be seeing any primer left on the wheels, and if for some reason you do, cover that up on this coat and then apply 1 more coat to get full coverage around the wheel. I also wanted to remind you, if you are going to be painting your wheels, or anything else for that matter, please remember to wear a respirator. I've painted once or twice without wearing one, and I have regretted it ever since then. I always wear a respirator now. I don't want these paint fumes going into my lungs. Trust me, if you don't wear a respirator, you're going to be coughing all day and it's going to be very difficult to breathe. So be safe and be smart. Wear a respirator. With our final coat of gloss black down, we are officially done painting these wheels. I am going to let these wheels dry overnight, and then I'm going to paint the other side off camera. You guys don't need to see that again, it's the exact same process. So instead, let's check out how these wheels came out. And oh man, I am so happy with this result. These wheels look absolutely incredible to me. So much better than the silver that they were. And they're gonna look 10 times better on my white car. So with that being said, let's go ahead and put them back on the car and see the finished result. So out with the old 2016 Volkswagen Steelies that came on this car, and in with the freshly painted gloss black wheels that will make this car look 10 times better. And to finish the look of these freshly painted wheels, we need some brand new center caps. So let's toss out the old broken clipped ones and install these brand new center caps that I got off of Amazon. So I'm just gonna peel off the protective film and install these brand new center caps. And I also went ahead and ordered these black lug nut covers from Volkswagen, so let's install those too. With that being said, we are all done with this DIY video. We went from these old 15-inch Steelies to these freshly painted gloss black wheels that make this car look so much better. So thank you guys so much for watching. Remember, if you enjoyed this video, then give it a thumbs up. And if you want to tell me what you liked or disliked about this video, then let me know in the comment section below. And if you're new to my channel, please consider subscribing. So until next time, I've been Cuz, you've been you, and I'll catch you later.